Welcome back. If you had watched the previous video, you'll know that was kind of a refresh and a restart to this channel. And inside that restart video, we talked about motivation being one of the key topics we'll dive into on this channel. Now, if you had watched that video, you'll also know that I asked you a question. What does motivation mean to you? And it's under the context of leadership and team building. So if you're a project lead or a manager or a boss, what does the word motivation mean to you? What do you think it means? Now, if you hadn't seen that video and you need to, pause this one and answer that question real quick. All right. So if we have our answers to that question of what is motivation in the context of leadership and team building, let's dive in and see how closely your definition relates to mine. Now, what motivation isn't under this context is the whole carrot and stick idea. It's the idea that we're going to dangle rewards out there or we're going to threaten with some sort of punishment. I think that's a very common thought of what motivation is, especially in the workplace or on teams and other things like that. And unfortunately, I think that's just a horrible definition of motivation. I don't think it works in the long run. In the short term, it might. I think there's a little bit of fear and threat. There might even be some excitement from that style of motivation, but I think it fizzles out pretty quickly. And so it's detrimental because it doesn't actually last the long term. So, what we want to do is actually dive into things that are a little bit more internal and a little bit more emotional. And when we do that, we can then extend our motivation out further and have a longer timeline. So, how do we do that? Well, one of the good resources that's out there is a book called Drive. It's by the author Daniel Pink. Really good book. If you haven't read it yet, I would totally encourage you to do that. We'll reference it quite a bit on this channel. If you don't like reading, don't fret. That was actually a very well written book, so it's an easy read. Again, good book. Go out there. I highly recommend it, and we'll talk about it quite a bit. Now, in that book, they talk about three drives AMP, AMP, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And so we'll actually see how those three items are actually used quite a bit in motivation. So again, the book is very good. Go out and read it. AMP, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. A secondary thing that we'll look at is emotion. Now, coincidentally, and good for us, as far as I can tell, the words emotion and the words motivation come from that same stem word way back when, and that was to move or to spark. And so that's really helpful in our context. So if we look at motivation and we connect it to emotions, we can then start to actually improve our ability to motivate the people around us. And so I think you guys understand that. If you think about maybe asking somebody out on a date, when you do that, it's very emotional, right? I think the obvious emotion is arousal, right? You look at somebody, they're attractive, and you want to ask them out on a date. But there could be other things. Another emotion could be loneliness. Maybe you're just lonely. You met this person, they seem really cool, and so you want to ask them out again and see if they want to get together. Another idea is food. Now, food's a little bit more biological, but we also add emotion to it. One thing that has been pretty popular recently is adding an emotion word to the word hungry. So we have this word hangry, where we literally added an emotion to the word hungry, and we associate that with food and wanting to get food. But it could also be disgust. Maybe the emotion is disgust, and you look at your food, it smells bad, it looks bad, and you just don't want to eat it. Maybe it's inquisitiveness. You walk past a restaurant maybe 100 times so far, and you haven't gone in, and it's not the type of food that you might normally eat. But hey, you're today you're hungry, you're inquisitive, so you go in and you try this new dish out at this new restaurant. So I think you guys can understand that motivation can stem from emotions, and so when we look at that, we can help motivate the folks around us and on our team. So how would we do that in a business setting? Well, let's think about conflicts, something that a lot of people want to deal with, especially in a leadership position. So if we're dealing with conflicts, what is motivating the people to be in conflict, right? There could be fear. It could be fear of survival. Maybe they're just trying to survive inside of this work culture, or they're trying to keep their job. Maybe it's some sort of connection and they have this personal connection to their work. And so they have this pride as the emotion, and somebody is challenging that connection to their work. And so then an argument kicks up. Another thing to look at maybe is burnout. Burnout is prevalent right now if you believe social media. And so where could that come from? Well, as we talked about with the book Drive and AMP, well, it could be lost autonomy. So some people might be burnt out because they're not actually getting to do the work they want to do the way they want to do it. So they're put into somebody else's box, and that they lose autonomy, and now they're burnt out because they are trying to constantly meet those expectations or somebody else's ideas of what work should look like. It could also be just, again, fear or threat within an environment. And so they're constantly on the lookout, or they're constantly trying to battle these battles. And so they're burnt out because of it. So those are the avenues we'll start to explore through motivation, both through the book Drive and with emotions as we go forward. Okay. Motivation is huge in business because it helps people understand how they feel about their work. And so when you're a leader and you can understand the motivations, you can really kind of dive into that aspect. It helps with determination and commitment. And that in turn helps with job satisfaction. And so we can see all of these types of positive implications when we dive into motivation. Now, all of that leads to employee performance, and employee performance obviously leads to overall business success. So if you are higher up in a business and you're worried about your business, if things are struggling with the economy or other issues surrounding your industry or your products, getting your employees to perform at a higher level, that's going to help your business be successful. Motivation is a fundamental aspect of leadership. It directly impacts how people are consistently working, right? When they are motivated, they are far more consistent. When they are motivated, they put in far more effort into their work. So if there's a problem and they need to put a little bit more effort into that work, we need to motivate them. It also helps them push through all of those challenges and hiccups and roadblocks. So motivation is a huge impact on your employees and on your teams and on the people that you work with and are surrounded by every day, even your friends and family. Now, there's also the long-term implications, as we mentioned before, and then the short-term implications. And we're looking for both because in the long term, we can then keep driving folks and helping our teams be successful, which in most situations, the long term is a little bit more important because we got to keep going. But we also want to motivate folks in the short term. And so that's where, again, we might want to spark them a little bit more. We might want to push a little bit more on the effort. And so we can look at motivation in both a long term and a short term. Okay. So as leaders, it's not just about the plans and the processes and the timing and the budget. We also want to motivate folks so that they push forth, give it their best, and put forth a great effort. And so that's me trying to convince you that motivation is going to make your job easier. I look at it like the simple machine for your leadership. You're going to put a small amount of input in up front, and you're going to get a huge amount of output on the back end. So again, if that sounds good, if that sounds like something that you'd like to improve and help your leadership, help your team building, then I invite you to subscribe and follow along. All right, until next time.